now at Adams Road, and we're looking for 13 St Domingo Grove, which we think is up here. I found myself in Liverpool, at the centre of Anfield. I was a few seconds away from meeting my Uncle Alan, someone no one in my family had seen in over a decade, often talked about at gatherings, but rarely heard from. I was in the final stage of pursuing a desire to get to know members of my family that I felt I'd neglected, failing to seize opportunities to sit down and talk to them whilst I had the chance. Having not seen Alan since I was 10 years old, there was no one more perfect to fulfill this desire. Too young to remember our last brief encounter, it was as if I was about to meet him for the very first time. But I would never have found myself in this moment had it not been for the events that occurred over the last few weeks. After losing a member of my family just as we had begun to reach out to one another, I was not prepared to let that happen again. I just came from Dartspur to where I'd just been to see my stepdad just before the worst could probably happen. If you said to me 4 days ago that I'd be going to hospital to see my mum's boyfriend, Paul, right before he might have passed away, and that they were going to get married, I obviously wouldn't have believed it. It was good though. It was good to see. That's what him and my mum wanted. Paul passed away as a result of cancer on the 21st of February 2014, 5 days after he and my mum, now Anne Greenham, were married at Addenbrooke's Hospital. He was just 48 years old. It was the first time I had lost someone close to me, someone I thought would be a part of my life for decades to come. It was at this point I realised I needed to make a change. It had been 2 months since Paul passed away. I was driving up to Liverpool with my girlfriend Jamie, in hope of finding my detached Uncle Alan. In the couple of months that had passed, I had reached out to other members of my family, to hear their stories, find out who they wished they could have been closer to, and see what they knew about the elusive Alan. I started by talking to my dad, Les. We've always been close, but I don't know much about his early life. He went through a difficult period at the same time as his younger brother Alan, perhaps offering some insight into why it's been so long since we last saw him.
Well, when I was in my early teens, I was skinny.
Yeah.
I had braces on my teeth to try and straighten them. I talk like that.
It couldn't have been that bad.
It was. I had to go to a speech therapist to get my voice broken.
Yeah.
And I went from that to that. Then I went back in school next day with this new deep voice, which is too deep. I think it did too well.
In a way that I feel like I necessarily didn't maybe get to know certain people in my family when I was younger. Do you feel when you were my age maybe that happened to you at all?
I was close to my parents. The thing is, you do think there's a lot about them that you don't know, and you wish you had asked, and you never sit down with your dad and say, what was your school days like? Well, I know my dad hated school, to be honest, so I obviously did have that conversation with him. He went to a boarding school in Ireland, and he used to keep writing home to his parents saying, please can I come home?
You have your siblings, so you have...
Terry's 2 years older than me. Alan's 4 years younger than me, and Robert was probably 14, 15 years older than me. People used to say, why have you got two dads? Because when I was 7 or 8, he was in his 20s, so he was a lot older than I was. And we looked up to him, idolised him, but unfortunately, this is one of the things that we'll never know. You never had the opportunity to ask. Things went wrong in his life, either as a result of drink or he was driven to drink.
Robert died from asphyxiation following a night of drinking. He was 38 years old. My dad was 24 at the time. His family were devastated by the news, a 22-year-old Alan especially. This was the last photo taken of Robert before he passed away.
I think Robert dying affected Alan worse, and it set him on a course really that has been a decline really.
Yeah.
And then he's had health issues as a result of drinking and this sort of thing.
I've heard before about when you've spoken to Cherry about Robert, and especially when you talk about Alan. Do you remember the last time you saw Alan?
It was, he came visiting probably about 10, 12 years ago. He's basically, the last 20 years of his life probably been ruined as a result of drink and the problems that he's had in his life. Very sad really.
Yeah. Would you say you've extended as much help to Alan as you could?
If people won't listen, there's only so much you can do, and say he's a 52-year-old man now, if I thought I could help him, I'd get in the car now and drive down and see him.
Has he sent you a picture or anything like recently, by the way?
I got a picture from him a few years ago. It was a Christmas card. It's the worst thing I've ever seen.
Really?
A Christmas picture, I'll show you.
This was the card I was genuinely using to gauge what Alan would look like. We assumed he was the one on the right. My dad had been frank and honest, as he always has been, exactly why I love spending time with him. His insight into Alan's past, as well as this bizarre photo, told me there was no way to know what to expect. Jamie and I had almost arrived in Liverpool, making our way to her grandparents' house for the night, before meeting Alan the next morning. I was beginning to feel anxious, my head filled with questions I wanted to ask, excited to be reunited with my uncle. I couldn't help but wonder if anyone else I knew would make this much effort to reunite with a member of their family. It reminded me of when I sat down with my sister a few weeks ago. In contrast to my dad, my sister Laura and I spend a lot of time together, always able to make one another laugh and cheer each other up whenever we're down. She was always there to talk to throughout the decline of Paul's health. She was 7 the last time she saw Alan, but I wasn't sure if she would be as keen to see him as I was. Probably out of everyone in our family, I think you're the person I'm closest to. Closer than mum.
Yeah.
Dad.
Well, I think we see eye to eye about every situation.
Yeah.
We discuss pretty much.
Yeah. Do you remember when we just didn't like each other?
Not really. Well, I don't think we were as close and stuff. I think we always got on, but I don't think we were as close until our mum and dad broke up.
When do you remember the last time we saw Alan?
When we were at Auntie Cherry's, and he gave me this weird fish thing.
Oh,
do you remember that?
I know. Yeah, it was a fish. It was a fishing bait, like a little green thing.
That was the last time I saw him. And then Mum made me throw that away because it stank of smoke.
That was the last time we both saw him, I think, because I remember he wore fingerless gloves the whole time.
Yeah.
And was just dressed like a homeless person.
He could visit if he wanted to. It's a bit weird that it would take just you saying, do you want to come visit? I mean, if he really wanted to visit, he'd visit, wouldn't he?
But what do you think's holding? Why do you think he won't? He hasn't.
I don't know, lazy.
Lazy.
Yeah. It's really weird, I think he imagines us as little kids still.
Yeah, well,
if he actually saw what we were like now, he wouldn't even recognise.
Do you remember when we took a picture for him?
Was that one of us hugging? Do you remember? We took so many of them pictures.
We were there for 2 hours.
Standing on our decking.
It was like this. It was like this, wasn't it?
It was one like that.
Laura has never been afraid to say exactly what's on her mind, so her lack of enthusiasm to see Alan didn't surprise me. But how can you blame her? A man she hasn't seen for 10 years, little more contact than the occasional phone call. Alan is more of a stranger to Laura and me. If he hasn't made an effort to come to her, why should she desire to see him? We had arrived in Liverpool. It was the morning I was to meet Alan. After a restless night's sleep in anticipation, I was trying to prepare myself, but was unsure of exactly what to expect. After everything with Paul that I wish I could have got to know him better, this is just about getting to know my family whilst I still can and I have the chance. So if his reaction is to slam the door in my face, then at least I've come up here and that's the reaction I've got. There was just one person left to sit down with before my journey to Liverpool. The person I felt had the most valuable insight out of anyone I could speak to.
Hi, Nanny. The film crew.
My nan, Pat, or Nanny as we called her, had led a fascinating life filled with highs and lows. I'd accompanied my mum Anne on one of her regular visits to see her, hoping her past would inspire me to make the most of my family whilst I had the chance. She emigrated to England from Australia 60 years ago after meeting my granddad, Jim.
I met him at a dancing club that
Okay.
we used to go to.
A dancing club?
Yes, a dancing club. And we just met and started going out, and I only knew him for a year before we got married.
So what happened between the time that you then decided to come over to England?
Well, Jim's mum and dad went back to England before us.
Yeah.
And then Jim came to live in my house for 6 months. And
Okay.
then we got married in Australia and came over here to live.
You say you came over on a boat to England?
Yeah,
didn't
on
you?
a big ship, the Orion it was called.
And how long were you on that boat for?
6 weeks. 6
Christ.
weeks.
That sounds awful. Sadly, I never had the opportunity to meet Jim. He passed away decades before I was born, sleeping at his home besides my nan. They had been together 34 years. Do you think if I had got the opportunity to meet him, we would have got along well?
Oh, yeah.
Just like my dad, in the decades that have passed, my nan has gotten used to speaking about the people she has lost. But I quickly found out that there are some wounds that time simply cannot heal. Do you kind of feel like in your life there was people that you just would have taken that opportunity to get to know better, but you can't?
Only me, I wish I didn't cry so easy.
That's okay.
Well, I did try to find my real mum, but I couldn't. I just can't talk.
My nan had never met her real parents. Losing them while she was just a baby, she had been robbed of any chance to get to know them, and has since been unable to find out anything about them.
When you think back on things and people have died, you wish you'd have been able to talk to them. You think, oh, I wish I'd have asked her that or asked him that, and it's too late then.
I hope one day my nan will be able to share her life story. She personifies everything I have set out to do. Born into a generation of kids that were seen and not heard, I can't help but feel if someone had just sat down to ask her how she felt then, she wouldn't be so afraid to talk about her past now.
Hello, laddie.
Nice to meet you. Hey, this is Jamie as well.
Hi,
The place all right? Alan welcomed us in, immediately taking our coats and offering us a tea or coffee. It felt like any regular visit I had made to an aunt or uncle's over the years.
Alright, I don't recognise you.
I can't say I recognise
Not
you
even
too
from the
much.
photograph, no.
Our first conversation in his kitchen lasted half an hour, exchanging stories and talking about how we had been like it had just been a few months, not the years or so it had been in reality. I could already tell how pleased he was to see me.
You like this?
So when did you move up to Liverpool?
Oh, let me see now. Got to think. It was about 2002. Yeah, 2002 I moved up here.
So about 12 years ago. Right?
Yeah, 12 years. Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, well, that's probably about the same the last time I saw you as well.
Yeah.
Well, what was your memory of the last time that we saw each other?
You sitting on the sofa telling your dad what to do. You come downstairs and you was in charge.
Oh, really? Do you speak to Dad and Auntie Cherry quite regularly?
Yeah, weekly and fortnightly.
Okay, cool.
Just keep on top of things, how my nephews and nieces are doing. Always very interesting.
I see you got a lot of photos of like Rob, and you got one of me and Laura over there as well.
Yeah, got
Hanging
one
there.
of you on the door with you and Laura.
It's good to see that you've certainly seems you got that big interest in what we're always up to and everything as well.
Well, it helps me remember, you know, what it's like when I was younger.
I spent a weekend with Alan, sitting down to talk and travelling into the city centre on Saturday and taking a walk around Anfield Sunday. We shared a lot of stories, and once we broke past the initial foreignness of the situation, got to know one another. I took most interest in his past and the concerns my family often had about him. What sort of a relationship did you have with Robert?
Very loving it was.
Mm.
You know, he used to come home now and I was a little boy, sit in his lap and fall asleep.
Oh,
And he was a dad to me, really.
yeah.
You know, he was like my father figure.
Mm.
I think my father was my grandfather figure.
I tried to gauge how much Alan had been affected by Robert's death. Had it been as much as my dad suggested, and did it lead to the drinking problems he told me of?
When Robert passed away, I was just at the age where I was sort of getting to know him.
Mm.
And we're like sort of mates, you know, friends and that. Took me, you know, about 2 years to get over it.
Mm.
You know, it's just such a terrible shock. Well, I think the thing is, you know, don't wait till funerals.
Yeah.
Keep in touch with people.
Occasionally when I've talked to like Dad out in Cherry, they are a bit sometimes concerned that with everything that happened in the past with Robert and everything, that you might be sort of just drinking quite a lot when you're up on your own.
No, I did when I come here. I mean, we got it all sorted out.
Do you think there was ever a point in your life where drinking had kind of taken control, or like you felt like you were just drinking too much?
Yeah. When I lived over in Bootle, I mean, we were terrible. I mean, we would be outside the off licence at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I got a bit sort of addicted then. Then I was probably an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Because I was drinking in the mornings, but you know, I sort of, what'd you say, dance with the devil?
Yeah.
You know, ate the forbidden fruit,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't want to get to being like that again.
I was silent throughout most of the drive home, my mind consumed by thought and reflection. I couldn't have been happier with the reception Alan gave me. He was warm and cheerful, even discussing the darkest periods of his life. It felt great to hear what had happened to him firsthand, rather than what can often come across in a bad light from my family. There were still questions left unanswered, but what better reason to see Alan again? Sitting down to talk to someone just once is not the solution, but it's certainly the place to start. Whether you want to better get to know somebody close to you, or think you already knew everything about someone, take the opportunity to hear their stories before time runs out. Track them down yourselves if you need to. There has never been a better time to talk than right now.